At school, Simone is hanging out with her friends when suddenly her father Frederick bursts into the room. He immediately drags her out of the building, saying they need to leave before it starts to rain. The whole family is in the car and Frederick drives out of the city as fast as possible without an explanation. On the radio, they talk about people in another city getting allergic reactions and respiratory problems after heavy rainfall. When Simone's brother Rasmus unbuckles his seatbelt, the whole family turns to try to fix it. This distraction causes them to almost crash into a truck, but Frederick manages to dodge it. However, when the truck also dodges, it ends up falling, and soon the road is blocked by cars piling up. On the radio, it's announced that the sick people in the other city have died from the rain, so citizens are advised to stay inside. As a siren starts ringing in the area and a helicopter flies above the road, the drivers get scared and get in their cars to try to leave. However, it's impossible to get out of the traffic jam, so Frederick makes his family continue on foot. They run through the woods until they find a bunker labeled Apollon, which Frederick opens with his palm print. They move inside right before it starts to rain. While the family goes through the decontamination chamber, Frederick explains that Apollon is the company he works for. They've built bunkers for all kinds of disasters and they're fully supplied. After Frederick gives the kids a tablet with the bunker's manual, he tells his kids that he needs to leave for a while and their mother Ellen will take care of them. He informs Simone that a deadly virus is in the rain, and he has to leave because he's the only one who knows how to cure it. He asks her to protect Rasmus because he's the key to everything, and reveals nobody knows they're in that bunker so they'll be safe. After Frederick leaves wearing a hazmat suit, Simone checks her phone and sees reports of people dying all over the region because of the rain. Those who don't die right away become contagious and infect everyone who comes near them. Moments later, someone starts pounding on the door. Ellen tells her kids to ignore it because Frederick knows how to get in, so that must be an intruder. The kids think she's being selfish and open the door anyway. A man from the traffic jam has followed them and is now dying in the rain. He grabs Rasmus by his shirt and starts pulling, so Simone pulls back. Suddenly Ellen tackles the man to free her son, so she falls under the rain and starts dying too. With her last breath, she tells the kids to go back inside. The siblings watch her mother die before the door finally closes. While both kids cry, Simone tries to call her dad to no avail. After putting her brother to bed, Simone hides in the closet and has a full breakdown, afraid of having to raise Rasmus alone. A flashback shows that Rasmus used to be very sick and Frederick created a treatment with an experimental virus. Ellen wanted him to use it, but Frederick explained it hadn't been tested properly. However, Ellen didn't care, because by the time research was over Rasmus would be dead. In the present, Rasmus discovers a map of more bunkers on the tablet. Simone tries to establish a connection with them, but the communication system doesn't work. They search the supply room, and find a radio. Someone named Philip answers their call and tells them that someone is trying to set up pickup locations to get the people out who aren't sick. He thinks the phone networks are all down, and has no idea how far the virus has spread. Simone gives him Frederick's name and phone number so that he can try to message him about Ellen. In the middle of the night, Philip calls back to inform them that he couldn't contact Frederick, but he's learned that they're evacuating survivors in a nearby hospital site. The conversation ends when the power goes out. An emergency generator kicks in but the radio isn't working. Another flashback shows Frederick injecting Rasmus with the virus. In the present, Simone puts on a hazmat suit and plans to go to the hospital. However, when she reaches the door, she has a panic attack and doesn't dare to go out. She puts the hazmat suit back in place and talks to it as if it was Frederick, saying she agrees to raise Rasmus alone as long as her dad comes back. 6 years later, the siblings are still living in the bunker and their supplies are almost gone. Rasmus thinks their dad is never coming back and they'll die there. When Simone tries to share hopeful words, Rasmus punches the mirror. After Rasmus goes to bed, Simone puts on the hazmat suit and finally manages to go outside. The forest looks normal, and Simone is even approached by a deer. She starts walking and finds plenty of signs guiding her to the pickup location. Buildings and cars all look abandoned. When she reaches the hospital, she's horrified to find hundreds of rotting bodies. A flashback reveals that after the virus cured Rasmus, Frederick released it to the world, thinking it'd save lives. Suddenly Simone finds a growling wolf, who starts chasing after her. She immediately runs out of the hospital and returns to the bunker. The next day, Simone tells Rasmus that she went out but didn't find a single person, so they'll head to the next bunker in the morning. That night, the air supply is blocked and their oxygen level becomes critical. The alarm awakens Rasmus, who notices that Simone is unconscious and quickly drags her out of the bunker. The air outside helps her wake up. At that moment they're surrounded by a group of people with a gun, who block their vents to force them to come out. A flashback shows Martin and a group of soldiers being sent to guard the quarantine zone. Anyone who hadn't been in quarantine wasn't allowed to cross the safe line. If the soldiers found anyone who had been exposed, they had to order them to keep away. If the orders weren't respected, the soldiers were allowed to open fire. Martin's assigned spot was alone on a bridge. In the present, Martin is the leader of the group, who are now bursting into the bunker. They lock the siblings in a room and proceed to steal the few remaining supplies. A desperate Simone uses a marker to write on the window and communicate with Beatrice, who explains they're just looking for food. When Martin announces they're leaving, he tells Beatrice to leave the siblings locked up. Beatrice wonders when they started to kill innocent people. At that moment Simone finds the tablet, so she shuts down the power. Martin goes back and Simone shows him the map with the other bunkers, only to destroy the tablet. Now the information is only in her head. Martin hears a teammate saying that their friend Lee has passed out and she'll die soon if they don't get food, so Martin has no choice but to bring the siblings with them. Another flashback shows Martin's first day on watch. While playing with a kaleidoscope, he saw a woman with a baby on the road. He yelled at her and even fired some warning shots, but she wouldn't react. Martin got ready to shoot her but couldn't bring himself to do it, so the woman walked into the safe zone. Moments later Martin was called to the main tent. When he arrived, he found his fellow soldiers dead because the woman infected them. There was only one survivor, but when Martin tried to rescue him, the man started puking and died too. Overwhelmed by guilt, Martin ran away. In the present, the siblings leave with a group, who aren't very friendly. After they wander in the woods for a while, they hear a truck parking nearby, so they immediately hide under a foil blanket that masks their body heat. Two men come out of the truck and the siblings learn that they're hunters who kill survivors. The group calls them the Strangers. These men send out a drone that can detect heat and it finds a woman running in the area. The Strangers go after her, so Martin wants to use the chance to leave. Simone thinks they should help the woman, and Beatrice agrees. Martin refuses, so Beatrice and Simone go alone, forcing the boys to follow them. The woman falls into a stream and almost gets caught, but Martin shoots the Strangers just in time. He also notices that there are bodies in the stream, which means the water is contaminated. The woman asks for mercy but Martin shoots her in the head because she's infected. To reach the next bunker they have to cross the stream but Rasmus isn't wearing proper shoes, so they cover his feet with bags and tape. The team takes any useful supplies from the Strangers' bodies too. Eventually they reach a school where they can spend the night, ignoring the children's bodies everywhere. The team then searches for supplies, secures the building, and distills water. Beatrice finds some new clothes for Simone, and Jean gets boots from a dead body for Rasmus. Patrick notices that Rasmus won't stop hugging his backpack, so he steals it. He finds a bunch of drawings inside, so he mocks them for being childish. Later Simone is peeing in the bathroom and Patrick scolds her since toilets are dirty. Simone wants to know why he's so angry at her, so he explains that either they're lying about spending 6 years in a bunker and they're hiding something, or it's true and they truly are naive, which endangers the team. After everyone falls asleep, Beatrice and Martin sneak out of the room. However, Rasmus is actually awake and follows them to find them doing the dirty. Once they're done, Martin wants Beatrice to stay a little longer, but she never does. The next morning the group leaves and Lee collapses because she's very weak. Rasmus is distracted and accidentally steps into a poodle, so Martin gets ready to shoot him. However, Simone gets in the way and asks Beatrice to put on gloves to remove the dirty boot. They confirm Rasmus' foot is dry, meaning the boot protected him from the infection and he's allowed to live. Afterward the group reaches the next bunker, and Simone opens it with her palm print. They find plenty of supplies, so while everyone is eating Simone tells Martin that the siblings won't stay with them. Martin calls her naive for thinking they can survive alone. Simone rushes to get this bunker's tablet and turns on the power. She's also shocked to find her father's phone. There's a video message in it, so she and Rasmus hide in the bathroom to watch it. The message is from the company boss Sten, who wants Fredrik to stop worrying about his children and to go to the head office in Sweden to develop a cure before the end of the world. Now Simone thinks their dad is alive in Sweden and wants to go there. A flashback shows Beatrice, Lee, and Jean running away from Martin and Patrick. The duo yelled at them and fired a warning shot, making them stop. Beatrice told them that their bags didn't have food and Martin could shoot if he wanted, but she could show them where to find supplies. Afterward Beatrice took them to a greenhouse and everyone was fed. Martin was planning to ditch the newbies, but he ended up flirting with Beatrice. Once everyone was asleep, Beatrice sought Martin and they got dirty. The next morning, Beatrice told Martin a story about losing her parents and her sister, saying she was alone until she met Lee and Jean and having a group made it safer. This convinced Martin to travel together. In the present, Simone shows Martin the video and tells him she'll go to Sweden to find her dad. Martin thinks Fredrik is dead because he never checked on his kids and explains he followed all the rumors about a cure but never found proof. Now that they're safe in a bunker with food, Martin refuses to make the team move again but gives them instructions on how to find the only remaining bridge. After the siblings leave, Lee and Beatrice wake up and learn what happened. They get angry because the siblings helped them, so they should have helped them in return, not to mention that having hope for a cure isn't a bad thing. Martin refuses to leave, so Jean and the girls decide to leave on their own. When the siblings arrive in the next city, they find a fallen bus and take a look inside. At that moment they hear people coming, so they quickly hide, but it's Jean and the girls. They believe the sibling story, so they want to help and agree to travel together. The group first stops at a fast food joint to get some lunch, then Jean and Lee go to the optometry shop to get new glasses for Jean. Suddenly a violent gang appears outside, so Beatrice and the siblings immediately start running. The trio leaves through the back door while the gang stays to take the food. In the chaos, Simone gets separated from Beatrice and Rasmus. After running around for a while, Simone finds a huge public wall covered with missing posters and a lost little boy. At that moment the sky gets dark, so Simone drags the kid into the nearest building. She doesn't see a poster saying that the country is in quarantine, no help is coming, and people should head south, but the group is going north. Inside, Simone notices that the boy is taking medicine because he's sick. While she looks at the box, the boy collapses. At that moment the father finds them and tells Simone to leave his son alone. They want to go to another city to find a doctor, but they don't have the strength to travel. Simone helps them by giving them some food. Meanwhile Martin keeps thinking about Beatrice and decides to go after her, so he drags Patrick with him. As soon as it starts to rain, they take cover and Patrick plays with a device he took from the strangers. When he accidentally drops it, it shows a map of the region. Martin notices a wall that indicates they're in the quarantine zone. At the same time Beatrice drags Rasmus into a building too and reveals she was born there. 6 years ago, her parents told her that they were getting divorced. She went to a movie to distract herself from the bad news, and when she came out, the rain had killed her family. Rasmus awkwardly puts an arm around her to comfort her, but Beatrice only points out that it stopped raining. When the man and his son also leave the building, they're immediately surrounded by the gang who jump to take their food. Simone runs away in fear, but a man sees her anyway. She returns to the fast food joint and reunites with the others, saying they need to leave. Unfortunately the violent man finds them and asks for food while threatening them with a knife. Simone tells her friends to give him some food because there will be more at the next bunker. The man asks what that means as he takes Rasmus hostage. At that moment Patrick and Martin arrive, pointing their gun at the guy. When Rasmus tries to move, the man stabs him and runs away with his bag. As the others panic, Martin bandages Rasmus' wound using tape. Simone remembers another bunker nearby, so the group gets a shipping cart to transport Rasmus and moves as fast as possible. When they make it to the bunker, they discover that the door was ripped off and all the supplies are already gone. They decide to spend the night in there anyway, and Simone remembers that she still has the kid's medicine, so she feeds it to her brother. Afterward Martin shows Simone the map and points at the new large wall. Since all the bridges were destroyed, he thinks that the wall was built to isolate the virus in their country, and on the other side there's normal life. They agree to go there. The next morning Lee and Jean watch the only standing bridge from afar and discover it's being patrolled by the strangers. They discuss their friendship and Jean says he did something horrible in the past, but Jean doesn't care. A flashback shows him collapsing shortly after the first rain and being helped by a mysterious person. In the bunker, Rasmus is getting worse, so Simone tells Martin that before going to the wall they need to find a doctor. Martin concludes they'll have to cross the bridge at night, hoping the darkness will help them stay hidden from the guards. He notices that Beatrice keeps flirting with Rasmus, so he calls her to another room and asks her on a date once this is over. Martin also wants her to stop toying with Rasmus. Simone realizes that her brother can't walk anymore, so she wants a car. The only ones with working vehicles are the strangers, and Simone has a plan. She wanders out in the open until she's seen by a drone, then she runs to enter a parking garage. When the strangers come after her, the team shoots down the drone and surrounds the men to quickly beat them up. They tie the strangers up and Patrick wants to shoot them, but Simone argues with him and concludes they must interrogate them. When the strangers wake up, they refuse to answer any questions no matter how many times Martin hits them. At that moment Jean notices that one of the guys has a big snake tattoo and tells Martin that they have to kill them, but he won't explain why. Martin sends everyone to the truck and 3 shots are heard. After picking up Beatrice and Rasmus, the group crosses the bridge without issues. Simone is angry that Martin killed the men, but Jean says they deserved it. Another flashback reveals that after Jean passed out, he was rescued by a kind couple who took care of him. When he felt better he tried to leave, but the deaf daughter Vilda begged him to stay. Since Jean had nowhere to go, he stayed with the family and started to learn sign language. One day, the strangers found the house. The father went out to meet them while Jean and Vilda hid. Suddenly the strangers shot the father and entered the house to kidnap the mother. Jean watched everything while covering Vilda's mouth to stop her from giving away their position. When the strangers were on their way out, Jean noticed the snake tattoo. Then he checked on Vilda and was devastated to discover he accidentally smothered her to death. In the present, the group arrives at a town and sends out the drone, which finds the only house with a heat signature. The doctor meets them with a weapon and threats, but when she sees Rasmus' terrible state she agrees to help them. After Rasmus gets stitches, the doctor asks Simone where they're going next, so Simone tells her about her father. When the doctor hears that name, she freezes for a second and announces that Rasmus also needs a tetanus shot, but it's in another building. The siblings follow her out and are surprised to see her opening a bunker with her palm print. The doctor says she worked in the same company unit but didn't know their father, which Simone finds strange. They enter the bunker and the doctor straps Rasmus to a table, saying it's just to keep him still. Suddenly the doctor grabs Simone by the throat and throws her against the wall, saying that Frederick killed her children. Meanwhile the boys go looking for food. At that moment some strangers arrive and Jean sees the snake tattoo again, which means Martin didn't actually kill the 3 men. Jean grabs the doctor's weapon and runs outside to shoot the tattooed guy in the head. Then he lets the other strangers capture him. Patrick and Martin run away and reunite with Beatrice and Lee, saying they need to leave. In the bunker, the doctor complains because Frederick and Sten didn't listen to her warnings and they release the virus anyway. She then sets up a tablet to record everything because she wants Frederick to see his kids suffering. When the doctor is about to inject Rasmus, Simone tells her that her mother is dead too, causing her to drop the needle. However, Martin enters the bunker at the same time and shoots her. Before they leave, Simone takes the needle. Afterward, the group crosses the forest and finds another town where they can spend the night. Patrick calls Martin out for not shooting the strangers, thinking that's how they were able to find them. He blames Martin for Jean's death, but Martin points out that the strangers took Jean away so he could still be alive. Martin also says that Patrick was the first one to run instead of trying to help, so the blame is also his. After Martin walks off, Patrick has a breakdown. In the evening, the group hides in a building while it rains. Lee remembers how she and Beatrice found Jean after he buried Vilda and took him with them. Simone tells Martin that he should have shot the strangers, but he says no and they hold hands, which is seen by Beatrice. Sometime later, the group is lost in the woods because Simone can't find the next bunker and this area isn't on the map. Everyone is arguing and Patrick becomes aggressive toward the siblings, so Lee drags him away. They bond over missing Jean and share a hug. At that moment, the group notices some lights in the distance and follows them until they find a mansion. At the entrance, they're surrounded by 3 mysterious people who swear they're nice. They'll allow the group to stay in their home, but they must hand over their gun. Martin at first refuses, however it's about to start raining so he has no choice. Inside, the gun is taken away while the group notices that all the residents are wearing the same clothes. Suddenly Rasmus doubles over in pain, so Karen takes them to a bedroom with plenty of sleeping bags. Karen then locks the door, so the team can only sleep for now. The next morning, Karen gives the group a tour of the place and they discover there's a garden full of fresh vegetables and fruit. Then they're taken to the communal showers and told to hand over their clothes to be washed. Karen assures them that the shower is fine because the house has its own well with clean water. Since the group is skeptical, Karen gets in the shower to prove it's safe. After Karen leaves, Martin says they should escape, but the others like this place and get in the showers. There's a lot of staring at each other and they end up having a soap fight, but Rasmus doesn't play because his wound is bleeding again. When they're done, Simone looks at the wound and notices that it's infected. Meanwhile, Martin goes to investigate and finds a room full of clothes. There also are children's shoes, yet they haven't seen any kids. He then goes to the dining room and finds his friends happily eating breakfast and wearing the weird clothes. When he asks about the shoes he saw, the leader points at some kids playing outside and uses a manipulative speech to ask for trust. Yet Martin is still suspicious. In private, Lee apologizes to Karen for Martin and they discuss the amazing community that lives here. Karen invites her to stay with them, but Lee says she has to leave with her friends. Then Karen tells her to at least stay for tomorrow's monthly celebration. She also mentions that Lee reminds her of her daughter. A flashback reveals that Lee grew up in a Christian household. Her mother didn't want her to go to parties, but Lee was tired of how overprotective she was and after a short argument, she left for the party anyway. In the present, a scientist looks at Rasmus' wound, which looks very nasty. He explains they're out of antibiotics, but he wants to sedate Rasmus to clean the wound. The scientist grabs a needle and Simone notices it looks just like the doctor's, so she stops him and explains she has some medicine in her bag. When the scientist isn't looking, she steals this needle too. Later in their new room, Simone compares the needles and confirms they're the same except for one detail. One has a circle, and the other one a cross. While she's distracted, Rasmus takes more medicine. Simone brings the needles to the leaders and asks them about their connection to Apollon. They refuse to answer her questions and take the needles away, saying that Simone must let go of the past. At the same time, Lee is meditating with Karen, who also asks her to let go of the past. Lee doesn't want to because she did a horrible thing. Another flashback shows that during the party, someone put something in her drink. Lee lost all sense of herself and danced naughtily with the boys, which was filmed. Then they dragged her to a room and took advantage of her, which was also filmed. The next morning, Lee woke up and immediately threw up. When she checked her phone, she found the nasty videos and had a breakdown. Lee called her mother for help, but her mother revealed everyone had seen the video and refused to pick her up, pointing out that she told her not to go and Lee disobeyed. In the present, Martin keeps searching the building and finds a basement where some people are butchering something. When he's about to take a closer look, a woman kicks him out. Upstairs, he bumps into Simone and they both share their suspicions. Then they return to the basement, but the butchers are gone and the table has been cleaned. The next day Martin tries to convince his friends that they need to leave, but the others like this place and Simone wants to look for more clues. Then Karen takes Lee to another meditation session, causing her to think about the morning after her abuse. Lee went downstairs and found everyone having fun in the backyard. She prayed to God for help, and at that moment the rain started, killing all her abusers. Her mother then called her and promised to pick her up, but she also died when she stepped outside. In the present, Lee cries as she tells Karen that she killed her mom. In the evening, the celebration banquet begins and Martin takes the chance to break into forbidden areas. He checks the fridge and is horrified to find a human torso. In the dining room, the leader announces it's time to find the next person who will gratify them with their body. The group thinks it's a metaphor, but Lee realizes they've been eating human flesh. Patrick immediately throws up and Simone says they're leaving, but the leader forces them to stay. At that moment Martin comes in and punches the leader, but the scientist stops him by pointing his own gun at him. Then the team has to draw some papers from a bowl. They open them and Lee finds a flower, marking her as the next sacrifice. When the cultists are about to drag Lee away, Karen grabs the flower and announces she's taking her place. Lee has a breakdown, but Karen hugs her and says she must keep living. Afterward the leader allows the team to leave. At the door, Simone asks about the needles again, so the scientist says that he and Frederick destroyed the world. He says it can get better, but the leader stops him from adding more. After the group leaves, the leader kicks the scientist out of the cult for being stuck in the past. In the forest, the scientist finds the team and explains that he and Frederick thought the needle would save the world, but instead they killed it. He then injects himself and starts feeling unbearable pain, so Martin shoots him out of mercy. He then announces that Apollon should be their next destination, and Simone retrieves the needle. A flashback shows that Patrick had an awful life. His girlfriend broke up with him for not having motivation, his boss fired him for starting 5 fires, and his social worker called him a hopeless case. Yet he never paid attention to what their words. One day, his father gave him a car, telling him to go far away and never come back. Patrick ended up sleeping in his car, and when he woke up, everyone was dead because of the rain. In the present, Martin and Patrick discuss the situation, and Martin points out that traveling together doesn't make them friends. The radio they took from the strangers picks up a message and Martin looks at the map, concluding that they're getting closer. Suddenly they hear a noise, but it's just a dog. Martin thinks it's sick and wants to shoot it, however Patrick throws a rock to scare it off and asks Martin not to kill everything. Afterward the group discusses what to do since they're running out of food and there's a bunker nearby, but the strangers are too close. Martin wants to leave, however Rasmus claims he's in too much pain to move. An argument ensues and it's decided that Beatrice will stay with Rasmus while the others go to the bunker. Martin talks to Beatrice in private and asks her about Rasmus. In return, Beatrice asks about him and Simone. They realize that they were never right for each other and agree to break up. After everyone leaves, Rasmus removes the bandage and reveals the wound is healed. He lied so he could have a day off with Beatrice. They spend time together and Rasmus draws Beatrice. However, when she tries to kiss him, he looks away. Then he tries to take his medicine, but Beatrice stops him because he isn't sick anymore. Meanwhile, the group finds the bunker under a tall water. Patrick can tell someone was here, but his words are ignored. When Simone opens it, Patrick rushes inside while ignoring Martin's plan in return. There's nobody in the bunker, but lots of objects confirm someone lived here recently. Simone notices children's drawings on the wall and Patrick starts drinking. Martin finds lots of paperwork and glasses while the girls see a children's room. On the tablet, they discover footage of the experiments that this bunker's doctor did on innocent victims. He injected a father with the plague virus using an Apollon needle while Frederick watched from a screen. He asked if the man was immune, but the victim died after a few minutes. In the background, the man's daughter screamed for her father, yet Frederick told the doctor to use her as the next test subject. Patrick points out that the tablet has thousands of videos like that, and if they stay they'll be next. Simone thinks the experiment was necessary to find a cure, but Patrick calls it murder and they start arguing. Martin stops them and announces they're leaving, only to discover it's raining. They have no choice but to wait. In the abandoned house, Beatrice and Rasmus watch the dog in the rain. Rasmus is shaking because the lack of medicine has resulted in withdrawal, so Beatrice tries to keep him distracted with a dance. They don't notice the rain leaking through the roof. Beatrice asks Rasmus if he wants to get naughty and they kiss. At that moment a drop of water falls on Beatrice's cheek and Rasmus pushes her away. Beatrice has a breakdown, so Rasmus kisses her and says they can meet the end together. They end up getting naughty. In the bunker, Patrick keeps drinking and Martin wonders why he's so angry. Patrick explains he was hurt when Martin said they weren't friends. Martin doesn't remember what he said, but he's sure he didn't mean it that way. A furious Patrick doesn't believe him and goes outside to chat with Simone, who assures him they need him. Patrick doesn't believe her either, pointing out that everyone has someone except him. When Simone insists on comforting him, Patrick tries to kiss her, but she pulls away. Patrick gets angry and talks about mixed signals while his hands keep moving. However, Simone won't let him touch, so he pushes her off in fury. Simone ends up falling in the rain, so Patrick calls the others and says they should shoot her. Martin hesitates, so Lee gets in the way and points out that they don't really know if the rain is dangerous. She steps back and lets the rain touch her too. Patrick tells Martin to shoot them both and tries to take the gun, but Martin pushes him and the girls rush into the bunker. Afterward the girls stay in the lab while the boys wait in the dining room. After a few hours, Martin asks Simone what really happened, but she doesn't answer. He decides to open the door and Patrick tries to stop him, but Martin overpowers him. Then Patrick admits he pushed Simone, but Martin opens the door anyway. Once the girls are free, Martin walks in the rain and celebrates when nothing happens to him. The girls dance and drink with him and Simone kisses him while Patrick watches from the bunker, not daring to go out. After putting the girls to bed, Martin makes Patrick grab his things and kicks him out for trying to kill Simone. Patrick cries while he walks away. Another flashback shows that Martin found Patrick after his car broke down. Patrick shared his cigarettes and Martin was glad they met, which Patrick never heard before. In the present, Rasmus wakes up when the dog licks the couple's faces. He scares it off before checking on Beatrice, only to discover she's dead. Rasmus cries as he carries the body, and that's how Patrick finds them. He panics when he sees the body and runs away, not wanting to get infected. The fear distracts him and he ends up getting captured. In the truck, Chief Thomas asks Patrick where the others are. When Patrick asks about Jean, Thomas holds him down and rips off one of his teeth. A terrified Patrick tells him that the group is in the bunker and that they can get in because Simone's father works for Apollon. A flashback shows Thomas and other civilians drinking some vitamins. On a big screen, Sten said they were humanity's last hope. These people were chosen to guard the quarantine zone and find something very important. He also revealed that the vitamins were actually nanocapsules of the virus, which would be triggered if they left the zone. Soon everyone had a rash on their necks. A man was too afraid and tried to run away, but as soon as he stepped outside, the nanocapsules killed him. In the bunker, Rasmus arrives with Beatrice's body and quickly takes her to the lab. Martin immediately closes the doors and walks away, ignoring the pleas for help. Rasmus pulls out his box of medicine, however there's nothing left. Simone joins him while wearing a hazmat suit and explains that Beatrice is dead, so he needs to come out before he's infected too. Rasmus refuses to be in a world without Beatrice and makes Simone leave. Then Rasmus kisses the body and promises to see her soon before he leaves the bunker. In the woods, Rasmus uses the radio to contact Thomas and gives him his location, asking for the end. Patrick is surprised he isn't dead and tells the strangers about Beatrice, so Thomas is excited because they finally have one. Soon the strangers find Rasmus, who passes out because of the withdrawal. Thomas takes him and Patrick inside an abandoned house and asks more questions, so he learns about the dog. When Simone realizes that her brother is missing, she sends out the drone. In the bunker, Martin is still grieving for Beatrice, so Lee helps him bury her. Simone comes back to tell them that the strangers took Rasmus, and they agree to rescue him. In an abandoned house, Thomas gives Rasmus a medicine injection to fight the withdrawal until they return to the base. Suddenly a guard hears a scream and follows it to find the girls in the forest. Martin appears behind him and takes him hostage. They interrogate him, so they learn there are 3 more strangers in the house. Then Martin uses the radio to call Thomas and offers to exchange the guard for Rasmus, but Thomas refuses. The group decides to spend the night in the bunker and Martin locks the guard up in a room. The guard tells Martin that Thomas will never give them Rasmus because he appears to be immune. Then Martin shares this with Simone, who thinks it's a lie. They discuss their relationship and she convinces him to forgive Patrick. The next morning Martin calls Thomas to try to negotiate again, however Thomas points out that Rasmus is with the strangers by choice. Simone convinces Thomas to meet her in the forest, and Thomas explains that the strangers have been looking for an immune person for years and it's their only ticket to finally leave. Suddenly Lee and Martin bring the guard and Lee threatens to inject him with the virus. Thomas has no choice but to call Rasmus and do a hostage exchange. As soon as the guard is back with his team, Rasmus says he wants to leave with the strangers, so Simone yells at him to remind him of how many people got hurt to help him. Then Rasmus takes the needle from Lee and injects herself, causing him to collapse. Everyone stares in shock for a few minutes, thinking Rasmus is dead. However, he wakes up perfectly alive, so Thomas confirms he's the one. Afterward Martin finds Patrick, who apologizes for everything. Martin agrees to forgive him. Meanwhile Thomas puts Rasmus in a truck to take him to the base, and the others decide to come along. A guard kisses Rasmus' forehead before closing the car door, saying he'll save them all. After the truck leaves, the guard drops dead. Sometime later, the group arrives at the underground Apollon base near the wall. After the vehicle is disinfected, Thomas takes the siblings away and the others are sent to a bunker to wait for the tests. The siblings then finally reunite with Frederick. Simone has a breakdown and doesn't want to touch him, but Frederick hugs her anyway. Suddenly Rasmus collapses, so Frederick makes his team take him away and sends Simone to another room. Watching the rain from the window, Simone thinks about all the trouble Rasmus caused while growing up in the bunker. When Frederick comes to see her, she calls him out for having a comfortable life here while his family suffered. She demands an explanation, so Frederick looks at the camera on the wall and signals to her to be quiet before taking her somewhere else. In the bunker, Lee notices some familiar clothes and searches all the rooms until she finds Jean in the bathroom. After they reunite with a hug, Martin and Patrick apologize for abandoning him. At that moment a nurse brings them some supplements because their nutrition was poor for the past 6 years. Jean says he took it when he arrived too, but the others still are suspicious. Martin makes the nurse take the medicine too and she starts shaking, but it's only a prank and she's just fine. Seeing this, the group agrees to take the medication as well. Frederick takes Simone to see Rasmus and explains that since he received the virus in its purest form, it doesn't affect him the same way. This means he's always carried the cure. Simone asks more questions but he can't say more for now. A flashback shows that one night, Frederick visited the bunker. After watching his kids sleep, he shut down the power and returned to his vehicle. He told his partner that his children were dead to protect them. In the present, a doctor tries to take a sample from Rasmus' mouth, but he refuses to cooperate. When she tries to force him, Rasmus bites her hand and screams for her father. Doctors surround him to hold him down. Meanwhile, Frederick drags Simone to a tunnel for some privacy. He explains that he never came to get them because to make a vaccine, Apollon would have to kill Rasmus, since the virus lives in his brain and spinal cord. Frederick has spent the past 6 years looking for another person with immunity to protect his son to no avail. He tells Simone to wait for him on the upper floor while he gets Rasmus. Another flashback shows that Frederick's partner was suspicious of his lack of grieving. After asking some questions, he guessed that the kids were still alive. A desperate Frederick beat him to death to protect his secret. In the present, Frederick goes to the operating room and finds the bitten doctor dropping dead. Rasmus tells him he bit her, so Frederick takes a sample and runs a test that confirms Rasmus is contagious. He immediately activates the lockdown because the virus is spreading. An alarm echoes in the facility and Simone rushes to find her father. She overhears him talking to Sten, who concludes Rasmus can't be saved because the virus mutated, so he'll send his men to get him and start making vaccines. After the call ends, Simone confronts her father, who claims there's nothing he can do. In the bunker, the group tries to break the door to escape to no avail. At that moment, Simone calls them and tells them to cover the vents to trigger the emergency protocols. Then she runs to find her brother and finds his room full of dead doctors. Rasmus is outside confronting a guard, who runs away because he's afraid of the virus. When Simone refuses to touch him, Rasmus realizes he's contagious, but Simone promises to help him and sends him to get protective gear. The group covers all the bunker vents and sets some boxes on fire to lower the oxygen levels faster. The bunker fills up with smoke and the doors don't open until the last second, so everyone comes out coughing. The siblings pick them up and together they go to the garage to try to escape in a car, but Frederick blocks them with a gun. When Martin tries to confront him, Frederick shoots him in the shoulder. He's about to shoot Rasmus too, but Simone pushes his arms and the bullet hits the ceiling. Lee and Jean find a truck, so the group carries Martin and leaves together. They drive to the gate in the wall, where Thomas is waiting. He asks the group if they have a rash on their necks and confirms that the vitamins were actually the virus, which will trigger if they leave. Suddenly Patrick grabs Thomas hostage, threatening to inject him with the pure virus. Since the siblings are clean, Martin tells them to leave and shares one last kiss with Simone. However, she refuses to abandon her friends and pushes them all in the truck, which she turns around and drives toward the woods to finally escape. Thomas promises to catch them again. Meanwhile, Sten meets with investors to start selling the cure and a way to weaponize the virus. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.